They're in the midst of a big FSA loan that's gonna help them like seriously grow. So like mobile chicken coops and a bunch of stuff. But I assume that's all happening at Stony Pond. Yeah.
Does it look like other people were showing up, or is that? People watching, how would you? I think maybe we should start.
Hard to tell, but
When are you guys opening, Jess?
Farmstand.
Yeah,
I feel like,
if you wait until strawberries are rolling.
I think we'll open a little bit before end of May,
Okay,
I think,
yeah,
depending on when I can get it together. My mom comes like next week, so she can watch Cena while Wilder's at school, so I'll have more time. Yeah, but I think end of May.
Yeah.
Gives us some time to get like the farm in like public mode.
Mhm.
And then. And you're mid-May.
we're gonna pop up on the 14th and the 21st with just plants and hopefully some vegetables. We'll see. But Wednesday, the 25th, will be open for good.
And when's your CSA start?
June 15th.
We're good to start. I think.
Okay. Do you want me to get going?
Oh, yes, we're all
Oh, okay.
set on my end.
Okay, all right. So hi, everyone. I'm Kate Lampton. I'm on the Charlotte Land Trust Board. And thank you for joining us tonight. And also thank you to the library for hosting. That's great. And everybody on the CLT board always wants to acknowledge and thank our donors, because without them, none of the work we do is going to happen, whether it's this study or our land conservation work. With me tonight is Jessica Sanford and Katie Rose Leonard. And Jessica is also on the CLT board, and together with Adam Hausman runs Adams Berry Farm over in East Charlotte. And Katie Rose and her husband bought a farm on the southern end of town last year. And Katie Rose is the owner operator of Head Over Fields Farm. And they're going to both, being farmers, will be able to talk a little bit more in depth about some of the things we found in the farm study. So for over 30 years, the Charlotte Land Trust has worked to conserve the agricultural, natural, and scenic resources in Charlotte. And for a number of years now, we've noticed the changing nature of farming in town. And we were having a lot of questions and discussion about what the changing scene meant, not only for our conservation work, but also for the Charlotte farm economy and for the Charlotte Land Trust. So to help us find out more about those questions, we teamed up with the Center for Rural Studies at UVM, and they developed and conducted for us a mixed method study. And that included the traditional background data from federal, state, local sources, but also a online survey, which very gratifyingly had a really good return rate. We also talked directly to farmers in Charlotte, both in focus groups and in individual interviews. And the final piece of our work in the study was to create a farm list of farms in Charlotte. Now, we know it's not complete. It's something that we'll keep working on as we go forward. And we really urge everybody to take a look at the farm list. It's in the appendix of our study, which is found on our website. And the farm list had really two purposes. One, to get some data on farms in town, but also as a tool that we can use to support our local farmers and buy locally. The Grange is going to be putting together, I think, another format for the farm list to make it more readily available. That'll be coming soon as well. So before we get into some discussion with Katie Rose and Jessica on a little bit more in-depth take on some of our information, I thought I'd give us sort of a snapshot look at farming in Charlotte based on what we found in the study. So in the National Agricultural Census of 2017, which is the most recent census available, there were 77 farms in Charlotte. Based on our data from the study, the average size of farms in Charlotte is about 100 acres, with a median size of about 57 acres. A third of the farmers in Charlotte get their principal income from their farms, and that leaves 2/3 of them that need off-farm income to make things work. The average age of farmers in Charlotte is somewhat younger than both the state average and the national average. And we think this is very encouraging information because both nationally and in Vermont, the average age of farmers is increasing, and there is discussion and concern over whether that next generation is out there to take over those farms. One thing that was abundantly clear in our study was that farms in Charlotte are becoming very diversified. And that diversity is, of course, the produce that's being grown, but it's also the products that are being created here in town. Value-added products such as sap being turned into syrup, wheat being turned into flour, grapes into wine. All of those things are happening in Charlotte. They're all techniques farmers are using to increase the productivity and the viability of their farms. There also is a big increasing diversity in growing techniques and soil management techniques. Other ways that farmers are diversifying the way they farm to increase the viability of their farms. One of the big changes that we saw is the diversity of marketing approaches in farms today in Charlotte. A whole host of different things happening, sometimes many different methods on even an individual farm. And one thing we found in the survey as an example of this is there are at least 19 farms in Charlotte that are doing direct to consumer sales as part of their farm business. One thing that had really not been on our radar and sort of was a surprise to us were the number of farms engaging in agritourism as part of the mix in their diversified farms. Based on our survey, 58% of the survey respondents said that they were using some sort of agritourism as part of the mix. And then a piece of information very important to Charlotte was about dairy farms. And we knew there was going to be a change. I think we were a bit surprised at the magnitude of the change. In the 2017 Ag Census, there were 11 dairy farms identified in Charlotte. And as part of our study, we could only find 2. So for certainly most of the 20th century, dairy farming really shaped the landscape of Charlotte. And one of the big questions going forward with the information from this study is what is the impact of the shift out of dairy agriculture going to do, not only for the work Charlotte Land Trust does, or the Charlotte farm economy, but what's going to be the change to the landscape? What's going to step in to use those large acreage farms in the future? So that, I think, will be a good segue into our first question for Katie Rose and for Jessica, is what do you hear from other farmers? What have you observed in your work about this shift out of dairy agriculture and what's coming next? Jessica, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I feel, in Charlotte and elsewhere in Vermont, there's a real question with what's going to happen to all the open land that was once dairy farmed, and what will happen to the dairy industry. And a lot of small diversified farms are coming and buying portions of that land. And well, they can't use all of that land. Most small scale diversified veggie farms don't need 200, 300 acres. A lot of people are turning to grazing and livestock as a means of agriculture. And even in Charlotte, I think 28%.
28% of the people responding to the survey said they raise meat animals, principally beef.
So they can help preserve the larger tracts of land in Charlotte and Vermont, because a lot of it's not suitable for veggie production, whether it be steep grades or heavy soils or just too large for one farmer to manage or purchase.
Katie Rose, some thoughts?
Sure. Speaking personally from about our farm for a moment, it was previously part of the Claflin Farm Dairy, which encompassed over 400 acres several decades ago and has changed hands and been split up and subdivided over the years. Our farm is 76 acres, but doesn't really have any of the original dairy infrastructure with it. So is no longer a viable option on our farm. Not that that's what my experience is anyway. I'm a vegetable grower. And we're using a small portion of that and maintaining a relationship with a local dairy farmer who's haying most of it. We do have some pasture. We'd love to see animals back out there someday. But for now, collaborating with a local dairy farmer is working for us until we have other plans for that land or the means to manage it ourselves.
Thanks. So as we talked a bit earlier, as I described in the overview, we found so much about what farmers are doing to different ways of marketing and growing and all the innovative things that are happening. Both of you are participating in that sort of thing. So describe some of the ways that you are enhancing your farm's viability and with diversified marketing and other techniques. Katie Rose, want to start on that?
Sure. At Headover Fields, we use a couple different markets for our vegetables. We offer a CSA a few ways. We do weekly boxed shares where we pick what's in the box every week. We also do CSA cards, which are like a market style free choice option. They function like a gift card to our farm stand, essentially. We also do the Shelburne Farmers Market on Saturdays during the growing season. And we dabble in a little bit of wholesale with local restaurants and groceries. And the reason why we have our hands in several different markets is because it makes it more fun. No day is the same, but also it makes our business more resilient. Using the COVID-19 pandemic as an example, farms that relied heavily on farmers markets or wholesale to restaurants saw major disruptions in their businesses, and having other markets that you can rely on and shift to is helps us stay resilient when things are unexpected.
Good, thanks. Jessica.
So we are primarily a wholesale farm. So 75% of our income is derived from our wholesale accounts. So places like City Market, Healthy Living, most of the restaurants in Burlington, but we also diversify our income stream. And that is also, like Katie Rose said, to be more resilient because, things like COVID-19 happen, probably, hopefully never again, that disrupt markets. So other markets for us are we do direct sales through our farm stand and our pick your own operation. We have value-added products, which not only gives us different products to sell and appeals to a different subset of the population, but also allows us to make use of seconds fruit, so blemished or cosmetically damaged fruit that we can't sell. We turn into popsicles, jams, strawberry lemonade. So that's a way for us to also reduce waste and make money off our seconds crops. And all these markets are of value to us because they provide different income streams, but they also really expand our customer base. So that's all important in running a business and making yourself thriving and resilient.
Good, thank you. So all of the different things going on, all of the different marketing techniques you and other farmers are using, what is, thinking of Charlotte as a community now, what are the advantages for farmers to be doing this type of work, this type of diversified marketing, as well as growing techniques here in Charlotte? Jessica, want to start on that?
I think what makes Charlotte so appealing is its rich agricultural community. This is what we found. It's rich agricultural community and the willingness of farmers to help each other out, lend support. When we first got here, several dairy farmers offered to help us out, just came over one day and offered to plow our fields, bring people by to help. And then also access to markets. So Chittenden County is the largest population in Vermont. So being within 15 miles of that is really attractive. And then for us, because our business already existed at the Intervale in Burlington, it was really important for us to stay within, I think we drew like a 20-mile radius of Burlington so that we could maintain our customer base and our accounts. Yeah, and it's beautiful here too. And also, I guess it's sort of the banana belt of Vermont, you know, you get colder as you head into the mountains and it's just a little warmer here by the lake. So, and that all ends up.
Super. Katie Rose.
I can relate to everything that Jess said. And something I've noticed is for folks that are looking to experience their local farms, the draw is in Charlotte. There's the most open space in Chittenden County. And it feels like this is where people are coming to experience their local agricultural scene. Something we observed last summer, especially that blew me away, was the amount of people coming over the ferry from New York and heading south on 7 instead of north towards Burlington. And that's because of, I think, the open space and the farmland and the beautiful drive and everything that the farms have to offer south.
Just as kind of an add-on to that, is it your perception that for Charlotte is becoming known as some sort of hub, perhaps? Is it perhaps becoming known as maybe a destination farm place, do you think? Or is it too early to tell that?
I would love to see Charlotte become a hub for people to experience agriculture. I do feel we're in a unique, you know, geographical position to be that hub. And there's just such a diversity of things going on here. Again, Kate mentioned a few: grapes for wine and wheat for bread and veggies and berries and fruit trees. So there's just a lot going on here. And I think it's wonderful that so many farms are engaging in agritourism to get people onto the farms, whether it be for trails or bird walking or farm stands or research. It just serves a great resource for people to connect to their food and support their local farmers.
Katie Rose, what do you think you've seen, or what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think it's hard to deny the potential with the amount of open space and farmland that is still present in Charlotte, what that could mean for the future of the local ag scene. And I also hope that it becomes a hub and that more of the open space continues to be farmed.
Cool. One thing I want to add, just a general interest that we found in the study that Jessica touched on, is when we did interviews directly with farmers, one of the things they really noted was the strong farmer to farmer contacts and collaboration in Charlotte. And not only that as a real boost for the farmers, but we had farmers talk about that that's one of the things that actually attracted them to Charlotte. So it's something that is a strength we seem to have that is also self-perpetuating and bringing in other farmers, which is a really sort of a cool thing to see happening. So the flip side of what we were just talking about, how what's the benefit for farmers of being in Charlotte? What advantages to all of these types of farms, the diversifying ones as well as more traditional? What's the advantage to the Charlotte community to have these farms here? Who's up next? Katie Rose, want to start on that one?
Sure. I think I was talking earlier about how as a business owner, being diversified makes our business more resilient, but those are the same reasons why it's a benefit for the community. It's having the types of farms around that can adapt to changing markets and having a variety of different farms around so that you don't have to go to the next town over to get what you're looking for, but you can find it all here in Charlotte. That's a pretty incredible thing that we have, and it should be celebrated.
Jessica.
I guess it helps conserve that agricultural heritage of Charlotte. And I think that's something that's really important to one, people who've been here for a long time, but also from my conversations with people who've moved here because of COVID, like that's part of the reason they came. They sought out Charlotte was the open lands and the farms. So it helps attract people here. Having local farmers here provides food for our community and also provides to our local economy. I think 2017, the last data was $52 million was brought into the state from agritourism alone. And just, I feel like if Charlotte keeps growing and keeps putting themselves out there and really builds themselves as a hub to capture some of that money to help build our local businesses and help support our farmers would be really wonderful. And I think like conservation and stewardship of the land, I think all farmers like take real much pride in caring for their land. And that goes back to, health of our pollinators, health of our waterways, health of our soils, and those are all community benefits.
Super.
I would add that because of how much of the ag land in Charlotte is conserved, the community should feel comforted that those farms are protected and they'll be available for the next generation of farmers. And so this agricultural scene in Charlotte has a long-term future ahead of it.
Super. So all of what we've talked about is, there's a lot of really innovative things going on. It's pretty exciting. But all of these changes do bring on challenges, and the challenges are not only for the farmers, but also for the community. And some of those challenges were discussed when we did our interviews with farmers. So let's talk a little bit about those, either something you've perhaps familiar with personally or from talking with other farmers. What have you heard about or of some of the challenges of farming in Charlotte now? Jessica?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of farms and there's a lot of farms doing the same thing. So I think at some point you run up against market saturation. So how many CSAs can Charlotte support? So how can we help the farmers that come here access different markets, not just in Charlotte and Vermont, but outside of Vermont? And then let's see, other challenges. I think a lot of farms are looking to add agritourism into their mix. And there have been, acts and guidelines through the state and towns are supposed to enforce. So I think some farmers are looking for more clarity on what is required from them to engage in agritourism. So to have a farm stand, to have trails on their land, to have educational events. So what are the guidelines and how does the town help clarify those so that everyone's on the same page? So farmer A on one side of town is not doing something that farmer B on the other side of town that, got permission for. So just so there's clarity, so everyone knows what page they're on.
Katie Rose, thoughts on challenges?
Yeah, one of the challenges that we're facing or will be facing in our first few years of business, I mentioned earlier how our farm doesn't have much of the original infrastructure tied to it. We have one great building on Route 7 that houses our farm stand, and it's an incredible asset, but it's also our only piece of infrastructure. And it's a goal of ours to be open year round. In order to do that, we need to live there. We need greenhouses, and those are short-term challenges that we'll face. And other things like water. And then, of course, it has to be talked about is affordable housing for our workers and labor. It's a huge challenge. And as you can imagine, it's only getting harder to move to Vermont. Everyone is experiencing this, not just farm workers, but it's especially hard for farmers to find good help and to find places that are affordable for them to live. And as we grow, it's something we need to keep discussing and working on.
Super. And because this is a land trust, we have to bring up conservation. So in our discussions with farmers, we had 66% of respondents to the survey said that conservation had made a big difference in the viability of their farm. This goes a little bit back also to what Katie Rose was saying, not only lack of affordable housing, price of land. Conservation has been an element towards helping overcome that hurdle. Both of you are on conserved farms. So talk a little bit about what conservation means in terms of your farm, its viability, your ability to get on a farm. And why don't you start, Jessica?
Yeah, so I think conservation and working with the farmland access program really, without it, we would not have been able to afford the piece of property that we're on. So with the money saved, we're able to directly invest in building our business. Once we got here, we have 57 acres and it was raw land when we got here. And because we were moving an existing farm, we needed all the infrastructure right away. So we couldn't slowly build our infrastructure. We needed ponds and electricity and storage and barns as soon as we got here. So by working with the Farmland Access Program, and we were able to afford land, but also invest in our business when we got here, which was especially important because we were moving from leased land, so we didn't have like an asset to sell to help us finance our move.
Katie Rose, you and Brian worked with us on conserving your land. So tell us a little bit about that experience and what it means to your farm.
Yeah, the conservation process absolutely made it more accessible to be where we are today. And we're so fortunate in Charlotte to have a town land trust. So we were able to get help from both Charlotte as well as Vermont Land Trust. That is unique to our town. Not every town has that, and it's a great asset. And then something that's important to me that conservation means is that it's going to stay affordable for the next generation of farmers. And that's pretty great.
Yeah. So what Katie Rose is talking about is something called an OPAV, an option to purchase at agricultural value, and more modern ag easements now very frequently include this provision where there is, it's part of, and it's factored into the appraisal and the price paid for the easement, where it keeps farmland, conserved land, affordable for the next generation of farmer. Because before the OPAV came along, and especially in a town like Charlotte, it might be conserved, but it still had a value that might be beyond what a farmer could afford. And so this newer technique that she's referring to helps to even out that playing field.
But it also means the farmers who have OPAVs on their land have that commitment and value set that they want that piece of land passed on to farmers, because when we sell our farm, we'll have to sell it at ag value. So we won't necessarily get back all the money that we put into the farm for infrastructure or improvements. But for us, it's important to see that the farm farmed.
Yeah. So now it's the time to sort of do the crystal ball thing. Katie Rose, looking forward, what's the future of farming in Charlotte, do you think?
I think the future of farming is going to continue on a track of more diversified farms. I think there's also a lot of opportunity in cooperative and collaborative farming models. I've noticed a shift among young farmers that are trying to start farms together or trying to share land and resources. What happened at the Intervale is such a great example of something like that. And I think there's opportunity in Charlotte where there are huge parcels of land that are more than one farmer can support, for a group of farmers to come together and share resources and collaborate. Vermont also has a long history of just cooperatives in general, cooperative businesses. And I think we'll see more of that on the farming side.
Jessica, thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I envision more diversity and more young farmers coming to Charlotte, but also to help young farmers. Something like a food hub that can aggregate and distribute food to greater markets, so we aren't all competing for the same slice of pie, but also a food hub where people can make use of a community commercial kitchen to do value-added products, or we can support other food entrepreneurs to make value-added products, or a hub where people can get business planning or technical support with food safety plans or label design or business planning or support on farm transfer, and also a place where the community can come to learn about farm and foods. So really, again, to capture Charlotte or build Charlotte as this place to come to experience food and agriculture in Vermont.
Super. Thank you both. So that was, that's what we had for our set of questions and discussions. We're happy to answer any questions at this point. And Susanna, you're running the online if there are any, correct? Okay, yeah.
Do either of you two are involved with agritourism on your farms?
We are, yep, we do pick your own, and we have a farm stand. Let's see, I'm trying to.
So a farm stand is considered agritourism?
A farm stand is considered agritourism, yep. As well as like if you have trails on your farm, or if we did an event like this on our farm, that would be considered agritourism. So I think it's important to remember that agritourism aren't always like these big events where it's like, 200 people at the farm having a dinner. It can be these small, really community local events that are just bringing people to the farm. And so, yeah, I think for us, a commitment that we made with our farm is to always be a place for community to experience food, for kids to come and pick berries and have their first experience with farms and food, and then also to educate people on conservation. And so, we grow berries, so we have, I think it's fun for people to come pick berries and spend a day, and it's, a memory that a lot of kids have, and we just want to continue that. So our farm will always remain open to community and education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with that, you had mentioned state guidelines, the towns are supposed to help oversee. Have you had any positive or negative interactions with that?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so I think the question was positive and negative experiences on what is allowed on farms with regards to agritourism. And so we've had mostly positive experiences and some negative experiences. And I think, that's why there just needs to be more education to not just farmers, but to the community as in terms of like what farms can do. So if you have a neighbor and they're like, hey, it seems like there's a lot of cars over there and it's pretty loud, like what's going on? Is that allowed? We can be like, hey, actually, this is within the jurisdiction of what we're allowed to do as a farm. We're having, an event of, educating people how to prune blueberries, and there's 50 cars here. So just more information for everyone, not just farmers, but for community members, because having more smaller diversified farms that want to do agritourism means more activity around farms, with dairy farms and, grain farms, it's mostly just like haying 2 or 3 times a year. It's really peaceful, maybe, a few nights here, there's tractors out, but with farms open to community and people, there's just a lot more activity. So it's just a change in how the land's used. So just informing people.
Yeah, we have an on-site farm stand, and some of the newer regulations about accessory on-farm
Businesses.
accessory on-farm businesses are meant to just ensure that retail space is prioritizing goods that are produced on your farm. And the towns are going to be responsible for regulating it, and they're just starting to talk about what that looks like. So we're following that closely. We do buy and sell some third-party products in our farm stand, but our priority is first and foremost our vegetables. It's why we're only open during the growing season right now, when we have an abundance of our own food to sell. And we just dabble in other goods to kind of supplement our veggies.
What governance in the towns is implementing those?
I think that's,
Guidelines.
they're trying to figure that out.
But it's through,
And
it's
what
through
the-
planning and zoning.
It's through
Yeah.
planning and
Okay.
zoning. And then I think they're trying to figure out, is it 51% of your goods have to be from your farm, or 51% of your sales have to be from your farm? Because for us, we only grow strawberries, blueberries, and raspberries. So we'll never get to that 51% necessarily of goods being that we have in our farm stand, but that is definitely, that's 51% of our sales.
Right.
So I think, it just takes talking and communication, and the act, it's Act 166, it's meant to help farmers. And so I think they're just trying to make sure that it does help farmers and doesn't impede farmers. Because I think community members do want to see farm stands, and they do want to shop at farm stands. So yeah.
Question, I guess, for land trust members up there. How are you seeing the impact on conservation? And maybe it's too early to tell, but impact by the astronomical rise in land prices. So therefore, the price to conserve land is also going up.
And
How
it-
is that impacting some of the activity?
Yeah, so Brian's asking about the impact of rising land prices in terms of conservation. And I could say especially since Jessica and I work on the land trust here, it is a concern. Appraised prices in Charlotte, Charlotte Land Trust works in partnership with the Vermont Land Trust on most of our larger agricultural projects, just like your farm. And they always remind me when we see an appraisal for a farm project here in Charlotte that it is completely off the charts relative to other towns. But that's just a fact of life of doing conservation here in town. The town is very, very fortunate for a number of years to have the Charlotte Conservation Fund that builds up every year. And that's been not only a really terrific source for us as one of the parts of a conservation budget, but it also, when we go to, say, the state for funding through the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, it shows, it provides leverage for their money, and it also shows local commitment. So one of the ways we've been able to respond to these high land prices is through this conservation fund to help leverage other money. So, but yeah, it is a concern. We're waiting for an appraisal right now, and we're all, especially with sort of the COVID bump in prices, we're really curious to see what that appraisal is going to come in at. Anybody else or anything online?
Nothing online at the moment.
Margaret, or sorry, Margaret, go ahead, either.
Okay.
Sure.
Farmers grow the most important energy that humans need, food. But to grow that food, they need energy in terms of labor and machinery driven by fossil fuels. So small farmers, of course, don't have huge tractors, but they do, I assume, have some fossil fuel driven implements. How do you see the future of that with fossil fuel energy maybe getting more expensive, or even becoming, or even disappearing, let's say 30, 50 years from now?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I'm seeing some pretty amazing farmers turn their cultivating tractors into electric tractors, and that's pretty awesome. I think that there's potential in GPS robots for huge farms, not a farm of our scale, but fossil fuels definitely are part of the machinery that we use, and moving towards more sustainable options are important. We try to reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we're using by using different techniques to help with weed suppression, like reusable landscape fabrics and manual cultivating techniques through hand hose and wheel hose. And we used silage tarps to help prep ground so that we don't have to beat it with a tractor, and used a whole lot of tillage. So we are using more of those methods. We do a lot of cover cropping and try to keep the ground covered as much as it can, whether it's with a tarp or in a living grass.
So those are regenerative agriculture techniques.
Yeah.
Jessica?
We're a perennial farm, so a lot of what we do does not require the use of tractors or cultivating. And so we have the benefit that way, but I think every farmer has a commitment to, you know, ensuring the health of their land and the health of our waterways and lessening dependence on fossil fuels from an environmental standpoint, but also from a monetary standpoint. So I think all farms are looking at how to reduce dependence on fossil fuels. I think labor, you talked about labor as another huge challenge for farms. It's hard to find labor. It's hard to find people who will stay for more than one season, especially with a seasonal job. We employ people from end of May to October, and typically they don't come back because we can't provide them year-round employment. And I think also a lot of people realize that farming is hard work and maybe they're not quite cut out for it, or wasn't quite what they envisioned. And then it's also, food is, we run tight margins as a farm, and we don't have the ability to pay people what we wish we could pay them. And so I think that is a struggle for a lot of farmers. One, to pay themselves a livable wage, but also to pay their employees a livable wage.
Margaret, you had a question.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, what could a place like the library or the Grange do to help support you? And then what could we as individual members of the community do to help support and help, make it an attractive place for farms to grow?
Well, I think the farm study was a great starting point, just to help inform Charlotters how many farms there are in Charlotte and how many farms are open to the public to buy produce or meat or pick berries or apples. So I think that is a great starting point. And then to build on that, I think the Grange has some things planned in terms of putting out a map or just doing articles in the paper. I just think more helping Charlotters become more aware of the farms in their community, and how to support them.
Yeah, I've heard the Grange is working on a map, which I think is super incredible, and having those available here and being able to speak to the ones that are right around here and nearby, and how people can get there, giving people directions. I know we'll be excited to get as many of those as we can in our farm stand and hand them out and help support our neighbor farmers. That's really fun, and people who come here for the day are hoping to visit more than one place, I find. So that'll be a huge asset for us.
Great.
I have a question.
Sure.
So where do you find farm workers, and where are they able to live in such an expensive area?
So we have a lot, our farm crew is anywhere from Adam and myself and our 2 kids, but not very helpful.
Not yet.
Not yet. To 18, almost 18 people. So we have a diverse crew. We have, 5 or 6, college age graduate students who are with us for 1 or 2 years. We had one employee who was with us for 4 years, and he's decided to move on. And then we utilize the H2A program. So we have 5 gentlemen who've been with us for 5 years who come from Guatemala. And they stay with us typically from May till October. And we provide everything that they need for when they're here, housing, transportation, money to get here, visas, on all that. And then we utilize the refugee resettlement program, and we've had a Bhutanese family work with us for 12 years. And they are anywhere from a crew of 4 to 10. But the H2A program has really provided a stability to our farm and has allowed us to grow our farm and our business to become viable, just because they come back every year. We don't have to retrain them every year, and they want to be here and they want to work hard. And I think it's really valuable as a business owner to have people who come back year after year, and you just can't find that commitment. And at this point, the gentlemen from Guatemala are our family, and it feels good that we can provide a life for them back home to buy their own farms that they're farming when they're not here. But employment is hard.
Yeah, it feels difficult. I have my first employee, full-time employee starting in a month. And am in the midst of hiring a second part-time employee for the summer months. And they both are students. And so they live in Burlington and have housing in Burlington, as well as their own means of transportation. But the interview process was tough this spring, and I spoke with a ton of qualified candidates from neighboring states and other parts of the country who have been working to move to Vermont for a while, but just haven't been able to find housing. And it stinks to talk to somebody who has the experience that you're looking for and wants to work for your farm, but can't live here, and you can't help them live here either. So being able to provide housing on farm would be amazing. And maybe someday we would be able to do that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Does anyone online have a question? This is the moment.
Or you can come visit us at our farm.
Yeah, that's
We're
true.
always there. We don't leave.
So Jennifer Acid says, thank you to everyone. Great presentation. I'm very glad to have been able to listen.
Thank you. We had one more. Pat,
Yeah, it was H2H program,
H2A,
H2A.
yeah, yep. So they're seasonal workers, temporary workers, and they make up a large workforce for Vermont, from apples, dairies, dairies, H2B, landscaping, and something else is H2B, but yeah. But a lot of larger farms, our farm is heavily reliant on manual work, because all of our berries need to be harvested by hand, and they need to be harvested by hand every day. Whereas like a lot of farms can mechanize, say like carrot harvesting or beet harvesting. But all of our crops have to be harvested by hand, so we need a large crew.
Super.
I have another question on education. Do you work with the schools at all? It seems like there's so much emphasis on STEM programs nowadays, and I think it's more important to know where your food comes from.
Yeah, we unfortunately don't work with the schools because our harvest season sort of falls mostly between summer break, but we have worked with the Charlotte Central School in the past with blueberries. We just don't always have crops when schools are like looking to do stuff in the spring, like plant seeds and get the kids' hands in the soil. So, but we do work with UVM Farmer Training Program. So it's a 16-week program for aspiring farmers. And so we have them on our farm every week, sort of, going over like business planning, crop planning, labor management. So we have found working with higher ed, and we've done some field trips in the past, but not recently.
I guess agritourism is an education in a sense.
Yeah,
You've had story times.
we have story time at the farm, which has been wonderful to have. One, just kids out to the farm, but to support the library as well. And maybe get different people to story time because it's at a farm than would come to story time at the library.
Nice. Yeah,
We are still a very young business. We're entering our second growing season. But I got into farming through an apprenticeship program of similar to UVM farmer training, but in New York and with an education focused nonprofit farm. And I have gotten to this point 8 years later because of that education program where I spent 3 years and the help of strong mentors that have invested their time in teaching me. And I am excited to pay that forward and get education programming as a part of what we are doing at Headover Fields
Very admirable.
in time.
I think that's true of a lot of Vermont farmers. There is this really openness to sharing within the Vermont farm community, whether it be like how you're growing things, what your management techniques are, what your budgets look like. I think there's it just feels like a very supportive community, like farmers opening, their books to each other and, showing each other like their seeding charts. Yeah, it feels really wonderful to be a part of.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for your good questions, your participation. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Sure.
for organizing us.
Sure.
How many people did we get online